All right, shalom to the elect of Israel. I want to start by giving all the praises, honor, and glory to whom it rightfully belongs, which is Yahweh, Bahashem Yahweh Shai, Bahashem Chakodash. And what I said was all the praises on honor, all the praises and honor and glory belongs to Yahweh, who is the one the world ignorantly calls God, in the name of his son Yahweh Shai, who is the one the world ignorantly calls Jesus. All right, in the name of Yahweh Shai, who is the one the world ignorantly calls Jesus, in the name of the Holy Spirit, which in Hebrew is Ruach Kodash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone, every well. Peace, blessings, and salutations to the elect. And I'm gonna just start by saying this, just some heads up before I start the lesson. All right, but Salakia, if I have to go on mute, all right, or if the computer freezes or anything like that, all right, you know, if I have to go on mute or the computer freezes, you know, just skip ahead to where I continue to talk, okay? And also, you know, Salakia, I'm in a bad, place with not too good, not too great Wi-Fi. You know, um, something's wrong with the Wi-Fi. So sometimes it'll be choppy, sometimes it'll skip a little bit. All right, so Salakia about that, and Salakia for any background noises you hear. Okay, so but if the screen freezes or I go on mute, just skip ahead to where I continue to talk again. Okay, just letting it be known. All right, but this lesson I wanted to go into uh the split of Israel, you know, the split. Okay, I wanted to go into how we came over here to the western hemisphere of the world, and also the fact that we're gonna go back home. All right, to our land, Israel, and ultimately when we get back, we're gonna rule the entire world. The whole world is gonna be ours. You see. So because we came to this side of the world, man, you know, and caught straight hell, punishment, because really, you so-called blacks, Latinos, Native Americans, contrary to popular belief, all right, you're really from the East. You're from the Eastern Hemisphere of the world. Okay, you come from the land of Israel. All right, that was given to your forefathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Okay, those are your real forefathers. All right, you don't come from Africa. All right, you don't come from that. You come from the land of Israel. All right, that is your true homeland, as it says in Galatians 4. Uh, you know, but yeah, that's our true homeland over there. Okay. And we're gonna go back. Okay. But through time, we fell away from who we were, we forgot. Well, we went through slavery and everything. So, I just want to get some of that. And this lesson, okay, is gonna be posted. If you go to my channel and you click playlist, all right, it's gonna be posted in this playlist here. And I'm showing this, so you can see the other videos as well and be edified. All right. Because me and a brother, in different lessons have gone through explaining who the 12 tribes of Israel are. Okay. You know, and so this lesson that you're watching right now is gonna be put in this playlist, Lord willing. Okay. All you gotta do, all right, is go to the channel. All right, you know, go to playlist. All right, and it's gonna be right here. Okay. So it's gonna be in that. So you can click that, you get ready. All right. And you could watch the other videos and be edified. Okay. So lock it for the background noise once again. But yeah, man. So this is going into, as I just stated, the split. All right, how we ended up on the western hemisphere of the world, we Israelites, okay, and going back. And the fact that we're gonna go back, okay, and how we're gonna get back. All right, but you know, So as you see here, the sign, the 12 tribes of Israel chart, right? Which a lot of people don't believe, but their belief doesn't matter. Romans 3:3 through 4. They don't believe. Well, so what? Okay, we know that if you understand and you follow the doctrine that the apostles and elders of Great Millstone teach, you know that this chart is 100% on point. All right, and if you understand the uh the prophecy, especially Genesis 49, Deuteronomy 33, you know that this chart is on point, man. Okay, so without further ado, as you see here, all right, it has the 12 tribes of Israel, right, and it has men and Levi. All right, today they are called Negroes, so-called Negroes, West Indians, and Haitians. All right, and you have the Northern Kingdom. All right, consisting of so-called Latinos and Native American Indians. All right, you know, well, you can also say North American Indians. All right, So yeah, so I'm gonna start off, with how you so-called Latinos got to the Western Hemisphere of the world, man. All right, which is you so-called Northern Kingdom, you so-called Latinos, all right, and you so-called North American Indians, how you got over here, okay? Because you know they teach, as a brother brought out at camp one time, the brother Shapal, as he brought up, they talk about something called a Bering Strait, but that's false, okay? So I typed it on. Well, first, before I get into all that, okay, we got to get some history. All right, we got to get some history, man, so you understand, what's going on. All right, it comes from a you know all 12 tribes of Israel. All right, we were all together, as one nation. All right, but under David, under King David, and under King Solomon, all right, which were both so-called black men of the tribe of Judah. All right, but under King Solomon's son Rehoboam, all right, we had a split. Okay, and that's where you get the Southern Kingdom and the Northern Kingdom. Okay, that's how that came about. A split of the kingdom. So I got right here. I typed it on Google, and by the way, the AI overview, man, sometimes it be really on point, and it's helpful. But it says, and that's to go show this whole AI thing. Hey, we using it for righteousness over here, man. Okay, it still ain't, still using it to bring the truth out. You know, this is what was the split of Israel. It says AI overview. The kingdom of Israel, right? The whole nation says split into two distinct kingdoms after the death of King Solomon around 931 BCE. The division resulted from internal tensions and a rebellion against Solomon's son, Rehoboam. See? The kingdom was split into the kingdom of Judah in the south, led by Rehoboam, and the kingdom of Israel or Samaria in the north, led by Jeroboam. See? So there was a split. Okay. And you got the that's how, you should know this history, all right? The brothers have done lessons on it. All right, but that's why you got the Southern Kingdom and the Northern Kingdom. Okay. So it's causes of the split, you know, uh, power in Jerusalem. The people of the northern tribes felt that they were not being treated fairly and were being overtaxed. All right, so the kingdom of Israel in the north had its capital in Shechem and later Samaria. The kingdom of Judah in the south maintained Jerusalem as its capital. All right. And also this is where, the enmity between so-called blacks and Latinos come from. The friction, the beefing between so-called it stemmed from this. All right. Because we had a split. We're the same people, we just have different tribes we come from. All right, you so-called blacks, Latinos, Native Americans, we're all the same people, but we have our different tribes. We're the same nation of people. We have our different tribes we come from. You see? And the hatred that we have for one another, that our people have for one another, all right, between so-called blacks and Latinos and everything. That stems from this, okay? It stems from the split, all right? So I'm gonna just read this as division of tribes. The kingdom of Israel encompassed the 10 northern tribes, while the kingdom of Judah consisted of the tribes of, so the kingdom of Israel, the northern kingdom, is while the kingdom of Judah, the southern kingdom, consisted of the tribes of Judah and Benjamin, along with the tribe of Levi. Consequences. It says the split led to a period of competition and conflict between the two kingdoms. Both kingdoms were eventually conquered by foreign empires. The kingdom of Israel by the Neo Assyrian Empire in 722 BCE, and the kingdom of Judah by the Neo Babylonian Empire in 587 BCE. All right. So, you know, but you know, actually, I'm gonna just jump around in this last in First Kings 11, and I'm gonna go to First Kings 12. All right, which really gets into it. All right, so as we know, King David had a son, and he had, I believe, more than one son. Yeah, he had sons, but he had King Solomon, right? Which, as we should know, is Yahweh Shai, one of Yahweh Shai's past reincarnations. All right, you know. So I want to get this, okay? So get some background as to where the split and all that comes from. So First Kings 11, starting in verse 1. But King Solomon loved many strange women, together with the daughter of Pharaoh, women of the Moabites, Ammonites, Edomites, Zidonians, and Hittites. So King Solomon loved all these different heathen women. And that's not where he messed up at, as some Israelites would think. All right, but it tells you why. Verse 2, of the nations concerning which Yahweh said unto the children of Israel, ye shall not go into them, neither shall they come in unto you. For surely they will turn away your heart after their gods. Solomon clave unto these in love. Right? And he had 700 wives, princesses, and 300 concubines. And his wives turned away his heart. For it came to pass, when Solomon was old, that his wives turned away his heart after other gods, and his heart was not perfect with Yahweh his power, as was the heart of David his father. So that was where he messed up. Okay. Solomon went worshiping other gods. And as it says, and by the way, throughout this lesson, Lord willing, I'll try to pull because like I said, the internet messes up sometimes, you know. So I have time to load. All right. So, you know, I will be reading some certain precepts off my phone that I don't already have up here. Okay. But let me just get this. But yeah, the King Solomon went off, and you're gonna see more, okay, of why and the consequence. But he went off. He went after other gods, and as it says in Exodus chapter 20, um, starting from verse 1 to 3, it says, and the Most High spake all these words, saying, I am Yahweh thy power, which have brought thee out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. Thou shalt have no other gods before me. So you're not supposed to worship any of the gods besides Yahweh. Okay. You're not supposed to worship none of these idols out here, man. You're not supposed to worship the true and living power, Yahweh. Okay. And his son, Yahweh Shai. All right. But Solomon, all right, in this time, he he basically you know, his wives turned away his heart. In verse 5. For Solomon went after Ashtoreth, the goddess of the Zidonians, and after Milcom, the abomination of the Ammonites. And Solomon did evil in the sight of Yahweh, and went not fully after Yahweh, as did David his father. See? Then did Solomon build an high place for Chemosh, the abomination of Moab, in the hill that is before Jerusalem, and for Molech, the abomination of the children of Ammon. And likewise did he for all his strange wives, which burnt incense and sacrifice unto their gods. So Solomon built all these, these different high places and things, okay, for these different gods that he went after. Okay. Look, verse 9. And Yahweh was angry with Solomon because his heart was turned from Yahweh, power of Israel, which had appeared unto him twice, and had commanded him concerning this thing, that he should not go after other gods, but he kept not that which Yahweh commanded. Wherefore Yahweh said unto Solomon, for as much as this is done of thee, and thou hast not kept my covenant and my statutes which I have commanded thee, I will surely rend, meaning tear, the kingdom from thee, and will give it to thy servant. Notwithstanding in thy days I will not do it, for David thy father's sake, but I will rend it out of the hand of thy son. See, of thy son. Okay. Verse 13, how so the kingdom wouldn't be split while Solomon was still alive. Okay. It would be split during the time of his son. Verse 13, howbeit I will not rend away all the kingdom, but will give one tribe to thy son for David my servant's sake, and for Jerusalem's sake, which I have chosen. All right, that tribe is Judah. Okay. So the Lord is telling him because of this, all right, because of what Solomon did, going after all these other gods and things, all right. You know, he he was gonna, split the kingdom. He was gonna, take away the kingdom. Okay. Now we go down, okay. We read now we start up here, right? Verse 26 says, and Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, an Ephrathite of Zereda, even he lifted up his hand against the king. And this was the cause that he lifted up his hand against the king. Solomon built Millo and repaired the breaches of the city of David his father. And the man Jeroboam was a mighty man of valor. And Solomon, seeing the young man that he was industrious, he made him ruler over all the charge of the house of Joseph. Right? And it came to pass at that time when Jeroboam went out of Jerusalem, that the prophet Ahijah the Shilonite found him in the way, and he had clad himself with a new garment, and they two were alone in the field. All right. So let me just look up Shilonite real quick. I'm gonna look it up on my phone because I don't know if it's gonna mess up, on a screen or not. Okay, so bear with me 1 second. 1 Kings 11:29 for that word Shilonite. You see, it's not all about calling the so-called white man the devil. This truth is not all about that. This ministry, the service that we do is not all about that, man. All right. It's history as well. Our history. All right. Shilonite, when you look it up, the Hebrew word is Shialanya, if I'm saying that right. And it says an inhabitant of Shiloh. Right. You look on the map of Israel, Shiloh was a place. So it's not saying that Ahijah was of a different nation. He was just dwelling in that area. He's a prophet of the Lord, man. Of course, he's not going to be a different nation. All right. But here, this person was wearing well, I believe Ahijah, because it said he had clad himself with a new garment. Right. I'm gonna read it again. 1 Kings 11:29. And it came to pass at that time when Jeroboam went out of Jerusalem that the prophet Ahijah the Shilonite found him in the way. Right. And he clad himself with a new garment, and they two were alone in the field. All right. Verse 30, and Ahijah caught the new garment that was on him and rent it. Rent means to tear, okay? And rent it in 12 pieces. All right, and these 12 pieces represent what? The 12 tribes of Israel, okay? And yes, we're going to get into, how our people got to the Western Hemisphere, because as, for the most part, all right? Because yes, Jake is scattered all over the world, all right? But basically, our people, all right, for the majority, we're all basically on the Western Hemisphere of the world. All right, Shalaki, I just had to let that pass a little bit. All right, but our people, all right, the 12 tribes of Israel, all right, basically came to the Western Hemisphere of the world. In Genesis 49, it points to our people being in the Western Hemisphere of the world, man. Okay. Well, we're gonna get into that, but this is the back, getting some backstory of how it all happened. All right. So it says Ahijah caught this garment and he ripped it in 12 pieces, which represents the 12 tribes of Israel. And he said to Jeroboam, take thee 10 pieces, for thus saith Yahweh, the God of Israel. Behold, I will rend the kingdom out of the hand of Solomon, and will give 10 tribes to thee. All right, because Jeroboam, he would be what? He would be king over the northern kingdom. And we see the Jeroboam, being that he was an Ephraimite, all right, we see what the head tribe of the northern kingdom would be, all right, which is the tribe of Ephraim. All right, it says, but he shall have one tribe, all right, for my servant David's sake, and for Jerusalem's sake. I'm gonna read it again. Verse 31. And he said to Jeroboam, take thee 10 pieces, for thus saith Yahweh, the God of Israel. Behold, I will rend the kingdom out of the hand of Solomon, and will give 10 tribes to thee. For my servant David's sake, and for Jerusalem's sake, the city which I have chosen out of all the tribes of Israel. All right. Verse 33. It says, because that they have forsaken me and have worshipped Ashtoreth, the goddess of the Zidonians, Chemosh, the god of the Moabites, and Milcom, the god of the children of Ammon, and have not walked in my ways to do that which is right in mine eyes, and to keep my statutes and my judgments, as did David his father. Howbeit, I will not take the whole kingdom out of his hand, but I will make him prince all the days of his life. For David my servant's sake, whom I chose, because he kept my commandments and statutes. But I will take the kingdom out of his son's hand. See? You know, and will give it unto thee, even 10 tribes. And unto his son will I give one tribe, that David my servant may have a light always before me in Jerusalem, the city which I have chosen to put my name there. And I will take thee, and thou shalt reign according to all that thy soul desireth, and shalt be king over Israel, over the northern kingdom. Okay? So Jeroboam would be king over the northern kingdom. And the Lord was telling them in this by the way of the prophet Ahijah. Okay? All right? Let me just look up some of these names real quick. Let's look up what Jeroboam means, because Solomon in the Hebrew is Shalamah, which means peace. All right, now Jeroboam says Yerabbaim. All right, it says the people will contend. All right, let me see what Ahijah means. Ahiah, no, Salakia, Ahiah. It says brother of Yahweh. All right. But then so the kingdom wouldn't be split during the time of King Solomon, right? It would be split during the time of his son. And Jeroboam would end up being king over the northern kingdom, right? So here it says the death of Solomon. It says in the rest of the First Kings 11 and 41, and the rest of the acts of Solomon and all that he did and his wisdom, are they not written in the book of the acts of Solomon? And the time that Solomon reigned in Jerusalem over all Israel was 40 years. Okay. And, you know, during this 40-year reign of King Solomon, the nation of Israel, we had complete, utter peace. All right. And remember, Solomon was Yahweh Shai in the past reincarnation. Okay. So just imagine when Yahweh Shai comes back and reigns for good. Okay. Verse 43. And Solomon slept with his fathers and was buried in the city of David his father. And Rehoboam, his son, reigned in his stead. So Rehoboam is King Solomon's son. All right. All right. So let's look at the name Rehoboam. It says Rachab Ba'im, says a people has enlarged. Rachab says means to be or grow wide. And Im means nation, people. So Rachab Im or Rachab, right? That's Rehoboam's name. Okay. Now going to chapter 12. All right. So First Kings 11 gives background on why the split happens, and in First Kings 12, the split happens. Okay. So it says, and Rehoboam went to Shechem for real quick if it'll work. You can have an idea. All right. Mm, okay. Here, if you could see this picture, hopefully it doesn't go away. All right. But Shechem is right here. All right. So it says at Shechem, 10 northern tribes reject Rehoboam's rule and set up Jeroboam as king. Tirzah serves as the first capital of the northern kingdom. Later, the capital moved to Samaria. So, but Shechem is right up here. Okay. So this is where they had gathered as we read it. So First Kings 12, right? They came to Shechem to make Rehoboam king. Verse 2, and it came to pass when Jeroboam the son of Nebat, who was yet in Egypt, heard of it, for he was fled from the presence of King Solomon, and Jeroboam dwelt in Egypt. Okay, so Jeroboam, he went down to Egypt. All right. He went all the way down past here. He was in Egypt, okay, at this time. All right, but when he heard about it, verse 3 says that they sent and called him, and Jeroboam and all the congregation. So they went and called him and brought him, to this, to they all brought him, they sent and called Jeroboam to come back, okay, because Rehoboam was about to be made king of Israel, you know, king of the nation, right? Because in Jeroboam and all the congregation of Israel came and spake unto Rehoboam, saying, thy father made our yoke grievous. Now therefore make thou the grievous service of thy father and his heavy yoke, which he put upon us, lighter, and we will serve thee. Okay. And that yoke, that you know, because what? Remember, as we read, King Solomon was building those high places, so you know, we chance that he was really putting a heavy tax on Jake at this time. He was putting a heavy tax on our people. You know, bear me just 1 second. Bear me just 1 second, Babak Shah. You could just skip ahead to where I continue to talk again. All right, Salakia. Okay, going back. So, you know, so that was the grievous Salakia. That was the grievous yoke that King Solomon put on the tribes. Heavy tribute. All right. Because remember he was building, you know, uh, those idols, those high places and things. Okay. So, um, grievous service of thy father and his heavy yoke which he put upon us lighter, and we will serve thee. Verse 5. And he said unto them, depart yet for 3 days, then come again to me. And the people departed. So he like, all right, go away for 3 days and then come back. Verse 6, and I'll give you an answer basically. Verse 6, and King Rehoboam consulted with the old men that stood before Solomon his father while he yet lived, and said, how do ye advise that I may answer this people? Right. So he asked the the elder men that stood that advised King Solomon, you know, and pretty much like, what should I say to these people? What should I answer them? Because they wanted what they requested of him up here, to be lighter upon or to them than King Solomon. Right, verse 7. And they spake unto him, saying, if thou wilt be a servant unto this people this day, and wilt serve them, and answer them, and speak good words to them, then they will be thy servants forever. But he forsook the counsel of the old men which they had given him, and consulted with the young men that were grown up with him, and which stood before him. And he said unto them, what counsel give ye that we may answer this people, who have spoken to me, saying, make the yoke which thy father did put upon us lighter? So he asking, basically, his homeboys, just like a so-called black man would do, because Jeroboam was of the tribe of Judah, because his father was. Okay, so you know, it's just like the so-called black man would do, forsake what the elderly men were telling you, the wise spake unto him, saying, thus shalt thou speak unto this people that spake unto thee, saying, thy father made our yoke heavy, but make thou it lighter unto us. Thus shalt thou say unto them, my little finger shall be thicker than my father's loins. And now, whereas my father did lade you with a heavy yoke, I will add to your yoke. My father hath chastised you with whips, but I will chastise you with scorpions. Okay, you know. So let's keep reading. Verse 12. So Jeroboam and all the people came to Rehoboam the third day, as the king had appointed. So they came back, saying, come to me again the third day. And the king answered the people roughly, and forsook the old men's counsel that they gave him, and spake to them after the counsel of the young men, saying, my father made your yoke heavy, and I will add to your yoke. My father also chastised you with whips, but I will chastise you with scorpions. Wherefore the king hearkened not unto the people. For all right, so basically he was Rehoboam. He would said that he'd make life harder for them. All right, which just further caused a split. Okay, this further cause a split, and you can say this can be called a tyrannical government. All right, you know. But verse 15 it says, wherefore the king hearkened not unto the people. Yeah, Rehoboam did not listen to the people. Why? For the cause was from Yahweh, that he might perform his saying, which Yahweh spake by Ahijah the Shilonite unto Jeroboam the son of Nebat. So the Lord was the one, working in the midst of this. He was the one that was having this go down. Okay. He was the one, doing this. All right. As we know, Isaiah 45:7. Okay. The Lord knows what he was doing. Okay. But then you see here, it says what? The kingdom divided. All right. Then Jeroboam rules Israel. All right. So, now let's listen, verse 16. So when all Israel saw that the king hearkened not unto them, the people answered the king, saying, what portion have we in David? Neither have we inheritance in the son of Jesse. To your tents, O Israel. Now see to thine own house, David. So Israel departed unto their tents. But as for the children of Israel, which dwelt in the cities of Judah, Rehoboam reigned over them. All right. So, basically here in verse 16, the northern kingdom, was saying that they wouldn't be joined to or submit to the house of David anymore. You know, it got divided. Okay. A split in northern kingdom. You know, this is where it starts from. This is the northern kingdom, so-called Latin tribes. All right. Lord wanted us to stay together, we could have. Okay. But it happened for prophecy's sake. Okay. You know, in verse 18, it says, then King Rehoboam sent Adoram, who was over the tribute. It's laughing for the background noise. Bear with me 1 second. All right, Salakia for that disgraceful interruption. Okay, but going back. Okay, so First Kings 12 and 18 it says, then King Rehoboam sent Adoram, who was over the tribute, and all Israel stoned him with stones. So Rehoboam sent a tributary to go collect tribute, right? You know, but when he came to the northern kingdom, what did they do? It says, and all Israel stoned him with stones that he died. They stoned him. Therefore, King Rehoboam made speed to get him up to his chariot to flee to Jerusalem. So Israel, northern kingdom, rebelled against the house of David unto this day. Okay, so get into the split now. All right, you know, but yeah, and all you so-called Latinos, remember at one time, man. All right, well, just understand that we're brothers. All right, we're one people, one nation. Okay, you know, so it just we just it's all part of the Lord's movie, man. Okay. But First Kings 12 and 20 it says, and it came to pass when all Israel heard that Jeroboam was come again to Jerusalem, that there was none that followed the house of David, but the tribe of Judah only. Okay, so there was none that followed the house of David, but the tribe of Judah only. Okay, so when the split happened, Jeroboam basically became king over the northern kingdom. Okay, and Rehoboam was king over the southern kingdom. Okay, so and there was none that followed the house of David, but the tribe of Judah only. Okay, verse 21. And when Rehoboam was come to Jerusalem, right, he assembled all the house of Judah with the tribe of Benjamin, 180, so 180,000 chosen men, which were warriors to fight against the house of Israel, to bring the kingdom again to Rehoboam, the son of Solomon. All right, so it says with the tribe of Benjamin. So Benjamin also stayed with Judah during the split. And this is how the tribe of Benjamin is a part of the southern kingdom. Okay, as we see here. All right. You know, and we're going to get Levi in a minute. All right. Verse 22 says, but the word of Yahweh came unto Shemaiah, the man of Yahweh, saying, speak unto Rehoboam, the son of Solomon, king of Judah, and unto all the house of Judah and Benjamin, and to the remnant of the people, saying, thus saith Yahweh, ye shall not go up nor fight against your brethren, the children of Israel. Return every man to his house, for this thing is from me. They hearkened therefore to the word of Yahweh, and returned to depart, according to the word of Yahweh. All right. So the Lord stopped them because they was about to, they was about to go to war. Okay, this is key to understand. You should definitely know this if you're a Hebrew Israelite. You know, Christian, that you come you a brother out there on the highways of byways and say Christian rolls up, which we ain't debate with no Christians, all right? But I'm just making the point. Say someone had came up, even if someone came up and asked you, all right, well, how do we split? And why did they look at the tribes? They look at the chart and say, well, why did the northern kingdom split? And why does it say southern and northern kingdom? Like why like they say like what's those brackets? What that mean? You gotta be able to edify them. Let me get a quick precept. This is the book of First Peter chapter 4, verse wait, Salakia. All right. First Peter 3 and 15, but sanctify the Lord Yahweh, Bahashem Yahweh Shai in your hearts, and be ready always to give an answer to every man that asketh you a reason of the hope that is in you with meekness and fear. Okay. How you gonna do that if you don't study? See? You know, this is First Peter 3 and 15 in the NLT. Instead, you must worship a Mashiach as Lord of your life. And if someone asks you about, it says your Christian hope, but our hope in Yahweh Shai says always be ready to explain it. Okay, so First Kings 12 and 25, it says, Then Jeroboam built Shechem and Mount Ephraim, and dwelt therein, and went out from thence and built Penuel. And Jeroboam, let me just look, see if it has these places up. Mount Ephraim, I believe is, no, it's Carmel. All right. I believe it's Mount Ephraim as well, but I'll be wrong. All right. So Shechem is, around here. Jerusalem is all the way down here. All right. Uh, okay. Let me see. Let me just type it in. I hope it doesn't slow up. Mm, mm, let me just see. I don't know if this is a too clear image. Right. Let me see. Salakia. They ran and went out from thence and built Penuel. Let me look this up in the Bible real quick. And look it up before. If not, if I don't find it, then I'll just move on. I want to give anybody the wrong, not supposed to give the wrong answer. All right. Give me 1 second. Penuel. All right. It doesn't really, it doesn't really matter too much. Okay. Anyways, verse 26, it says, And Jeroboam said in his heart, all right, now shall the kingdom return to the house of David. If this people go up to do sacrifice in the house of Yahweh at Jerusalem, then shall the heart of this people turn again unto their Lord, even unto Rehoboam, king of Judah, and they shall kill me and go again to Rehoboam, king of Judah. All right, so, so even though the kingdom has split, Jeroboam knew the tribes, were going to go to Jerusalem to the temple to do sacrifice, and if they went back, eventually their minds would turn, eventually their minds would turn back and unite with Judah. All right. But Jeroboam, he wanted to prevent this. So what did he do? Verse 28. Whereupon the king took counsel and made 2 calves of gold and said unto them, It is too much for you to go up to Jerusalem. Behold thy gods, O Israel, which brought thee up out of the land of Egypt. All right. So, he he immediately what? He makes 2 calves of gold and gives it the credit for bringing our people up out of Egypt. Jeroboam was wicked for that, man. All right. And look, this is against this is sin. All right. Let me get this real quick. This is the book of Exodus, chapter 20, starting at verse 4 through 5. It says, Thou shalt not make unto thee any graven image or any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or that is in the earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth. Thou shalt not bow down thyself. So in reading that, some people will be like, so look, you can't make statues at all. You can't make pictures of the Lord. You can't make pictures of the angels, the chariots. You can't make statues of pictures of nothing, And that's not what it's talking about. Okay. You know, because that you look at the punctual the point is in verse 5, it says, Thou shalt not bow down thyself to them, nor serve them. For I, Yahweh, thy power, am a jealous power, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children unto the 3rd and 4th generation of them that hate me, and showing mercy unto the thousands of them that love me and keep my commandments. Let me get a precept to that, showing you that it's not, just making a statue. Because King Solomon had statues in his kingdom, and he wasn't going off for that. But bear with me 1 second. Okay. This is Leviticus 26 and 1. Ye shall not, it says, Ye shall make you no idols, nor a graven image, neither rear you up a standing image, neither shall ye set up any image of stone in your land to bow down unto it. For I am Yahweh your God. Boom. Okay. But you see, so you're not supposed to make it to bow down unto it, and that's what we don't bow down to the pictures we make. Okay, when you see brothers making pictures of Yahweh, the angels, the heavenly Father, we don't bow down to that. We bring that out to get to edify, all right, you know, and to encourage the brothers and everything, all right. The sin is when you start worshiping it, all right. That's the sin, and that's what Jeroboam was doing right here. He made two calves of gold and made Israel to worship it. He made the northern kingdom to worship it, man. All right. But verse 30 now, I'm gonna read verse 29 again. And he set the one in Bethel, and the other put he in Dan. And this thing became a sin. For the people went to what? To worship before the one, even unto Dan. See, they went to worship it. Verse 31, and he made an house of high places and made priests stay in the northern kingdom. They went to Judah where they were still able to do the office of the priesthood. All right, and this is how Levi is a part of the southern kingdom. All right, because Jeroboam, he made priests of the lowest of the people, all right, which weren't the sons of Levi. Okay. And I'm gonna get that real quick. All right, baby, 1 second. So let me get that. So, almost finished about the split. Let me get this real quick. Second Chronicles chapter 11, right? Starting at verse. Well, just review something real quick. Second Chronicles 11, starting at verse 1. When Rehoboam was come to Jerusalem, he gathered of the house of Judah and Benjamin 180,000 chosen men, 180,000 men, which were warriors to fight against Israel, that he might bring the kingdom again to Rehoboam. But we read what happened. The Lord had a prophet, come and say, don't do that, right? So the Rehoboam dwelt in Jerusalem and built cities for defense in Judah. So he built all these cities. Okay. Then look, verse 13. No, verse 12. It says, and in every several city he put shields and spears and made them exceeding strong, having Judah and Benjamin on his side. See? So the tribe of Benjamin is a part of the southern kingdom. And look, in verse 13, and the priests and the Levites that were in all Israel resorted to him out of all their coasts. All right. Why? Verse 14. For the Levites left their suburbs and their possession because that's what they had. All right. They weren't allotted a territory. The tribe of Levi was not allotted a territory. The land was divided, by territories for the 12 tribes of Israel to dwell in. Each tribe, have their allotted territory except for the tribe of Levi. They had the suburbs and everything amongst the land. Okay. But when this happened, Levi left that. Okay. As we're reading here, all right, came to Judah. All right. You know, it says, why? For what? For Jeroboam and his sons had cast them off from executing the priest's office unto Yahweh. Right. And that was Levi's, inheritance, that was their thing, to perform the priesthood. Verse 15, and he ordained him priests for the high places and for the devils and for the calves which he had made. All right. So boom. This is how Levi, all right, was a part of the southern kingdom. Okay. Now I'm gonna just read verse 16 as well, just to show you that, there were also some of the Israelites of the northern kingdom that didn't want to worship the idols like the rest of the northern kingdom, and they you know, and they wanted to remain loyal to Jeroboam, house of David and everything. Verse 16, it says, and after them out of all the tribes of Israel, such as set their hearts to seek Yahweh, God of Israel, came to Jerusalem to sacrifice unto Yahweh, God of their fathers. All right. So not, it wasn't, every single northern kingdom Israelite, you know, was separated. Some stayed with the southern kingdom. All right. So this is the split. Okay. This is, So when you read, furthermore, you have wars, or back and forth between the Southern Kingdom and the Northern Kingdom. All right, different kings of other nations coming up against them, right? So you gotta understand that. Okay, so now, okay, wait, coming back to that. So I typed it on Google. What happened to the 10 northern tribes of Israel? All right, and it says that when you look it up, it says 10 northern tribes. All right, it's just referring to the Northern Kingdom. Okay, all right, and no, Levi is not a part of the Northern Kingdom, but on here, the AI overview, it says the 10 northern tribes of Israel, who formed the kingdom of Israel, were conquered and exiled by the Assyrians in 722 BC. Many were deported to other lands, including places near Nineveh, Haran, and what is now the Iran-Iraq border. They became known as the 10 Lost Tribes due to their disappearance from the historical record. Okay, so it says 10 Lost Tribes due to the disappearance of their historical record, right? So, it goes into it. So then, to mention the Syrian conquest, this is the Syrians conquered the northern kingdom in 722 BC, and many inhabitants were deported. All right. So, and the scriptures, go into that. All right, what you're about to get. Okay. Now it says later theories and speculation. Throughout history, various theories have emerged about the whereabouts of the 10 tribes, with some suggesting they may have migrated to other parts of the world. All right, this is according to Northern Kingdom is in the Southern Kingdom. All right. And the Northern Kingdom, once again, being so-called Latinos and the North American Indians. All right. Now, being that happened, I typed in Google, right? How did natives get to the Americas? Because, right? And the reason I say North, because you say Americas, there's more than just North America. There's more than just Canada and the USA. You got Central America, you got South America, right? And you got the Caribbean. Okay. And the peoples that got here before the so-called Europeans got here was who? The natives. So when you say Native Americans, the common ideology of that, the common idea of that is North American Indians, like Gad, Reuben, so-called Seminoles as well. But somebody who would, listen to you and try to be smart would try to say, well, they would try, trying to correct you and everything, trying to, they would try to say like, well, that's, you say Native Americans, there was, it's talking about, that references everybody living in the first peoples that lived in all throughout the Americas, not just North America. All right, which is true. Okay, but people like to be technical like that to try to be an a-hole to you, man. All right, but basically, all right, so-called Latinos, they were the first peoples over here in the Americas. Okay, they were the first people to actually live over here. Okay, that's what I wanted to say. Okay, but when you look on Google, and a common idea, right, says, so I typed in how did natives have arrived from Asia, likely via the Beringia land bridge, also known as the Bering Strait, during the last ice age. Sea levels were significantly lower then, creating a land connection between Siberia and Alaska. This migration occurred tens of thousands of years ago, with the first migrations potentially starting around 30,000 or 12,000 years before the present, according to a National Institute of Health article, right? Which is this is a lie. All right. The uh the natives, they didn't get to the Americas by way of the Bering Strait. That's a lie. Okay. They want to say that yeah, I'm gonna take a picture. All right. Yeah, when they try to say that, uh like you know, let me just put it up here. So you can see. So you can understand what they're trying to say, which is off. All right. But they basically saying, this look like it's like basically a natural land bridge that they got from Asia to over here. Okay, which is false. All right, that's a lie. All right, that's not how the so-called natives got to the Americas, man. All right, and we know that because the scriptures talk about it. Okay, you know. So so let's review a little bit. So we went over that our people were once united, right? And they had a split, the Southern Kingdom and North. So, and the common misconception of how they got to the Americas, right? How the Northern Kingdom got to the Americas is the Bering Strait, which is a lie. Okay. Now, the true way that they got here is recorded in the Bible. The true way that you so-called Latinos and North American Indians got to the Americas is recorded in the Bible, right? And in the book of the Apocrypha, all right, Second Ezra, chapter 13, starting in verse 40, says those are the 10 tribes, right? The Northern Kingdom. See, this is why it's important. That's why I went through that history, so you can understand. Those are the 10 tribes. The Northern Kingdom is also sometimes referred to as the 10 tribes. Okay, so those are the 10 tribes which were carried away prisoners out of their own land in the time of Osea the king, whom Salmanassar, the king of Assyria, led away captive, and he carried them over the waters, and so came they into another land. All right, now this is referencing back to this here is the book of Second Kings, chapter 17 and verse 1. All right. So you see, it was key to know that there was a split. All right. Second Kings chapter 17 and verse 1 says Hoshea reigns over Israel in the 12th year of Ahaz, king of Judah, southern kingdom. See, began Hoshea, the son of Elah, to reign in Samaria over Israel, the northern kingdom, 9 years. Sometimes in the Bible, when it says Judah, doesn't only mean the tribe of Judah, but the southern kingdom. And sometimes when it says Israel, doesn't always mean the whole nation, but it means the northern kingdom sometimes. All right. So from the split happening, all right, you had to know that history of the split in order to understand what's going on here, to understand why it would say king over Judah and king over Israel. You see, like the apostles say, you have to understand the history to understand the mystery. Okay, so here it says I'm gonna read it again. Second Kings chapter 17, verse 1. This is where this scripture is referring to. So I have to give precept upon precept. To thy precepts I get understanding. It says in the 12th year of Ahaz, king of Judah, began Hoshea, right, the son of Elah, to reign in Samaria over Israel 9 years. Hoshea, and here in the Apocrypha is said in the time of Osea the king. It's talking about the same person, just says it a little different, right? It says, and he did that which was evil in the sight of Yahweh, but not as the kings of Israel that were before him. Against him, so he did evil, he did wickedness, right? Against the Lord. Verse 3, against him came up who? Shalmaneser, king of Assyria. And Hoshea became his servant and gave him presents. So Shalmaneser, basically the Assyrians came up against him, right? Verse 4, and the king of Assyria found conspiracy in Hoshea, for he had sent messengers to So, king of Egypt, and brought no present to the king of Assyria, as he had done year by year. Therefore the king of Assyria shut him up and bound him in prison. Then the king of Assyria came up throughout all the land and went up to Samaria, where the northern kingdom was at, and besieged it 3 years. So he says Israel captive. In the 9th year, listen closely, verse 6. In the 9th year of Hoshea, the king of Assyria took Samaria. So the Assyrians came up against the northern kingdom. and carried Israel, the northern kingdom, away into Assyria, and placed them in Halah and in Habor by the river of Gozan and in the cities of the Medes. So when the time Hoshea was king over the northern kingdom, the Assyrians came up, all right, and besieged, okay, and then they carried the northern kingdom away into Assyria and placed them in Halah and in Habor by the river of Gozan and in the cities of the Medes. Okay, so let me just see if I get a map. Um, okay. Mm, all right. Let me see some. Slovakia. Halah. Okay. And then Habor by the river of Gozan. All right. So let me just put it up here like this. Highlight up here. It says Israelites are exiled to Gozan and Media, the northern kingdom. So they're taking up Syrians, taking them up from here. It says the river goes on. So around, here basically, took them in, Syria, pretty much, you could say. All right. So they carried them away. All right. And why? Verse 17, it's like verse 7, for so it was that the children of Israel had sinned against Yahweh their God, which had brought them up out of the land of Egypt from under the hand of Pharaoh, king of Egypt, that had feared other gods and walked in the statutes of the heathen, whom Yahweh cast out from before the children of Israel and of the kings of Israel, which they had made. All right. And it goes into more. Okay. But so this is what it's referring to. Second Ezra 13 and 40. Those are the 10 tribes which were carried away prisoners out of their own land in the time of Hosea the king, whom Salmanassar, the king of Israel, Slaki, the king of Assyria, led away captive, and he carried them over the waters, and so came they into another land. They came into Assyria. Okay. you know, so it's recalling that history. You see, um, verse 41. But they, the northern kingdom, took this counsel among themselves that they would leave the multitude of the heathen and go forth into a further country where never mankind dwelt. Now, dwelt means to actually live there. People are placed there, they live in there, and they stay there. Okay. So, while the 10 tribes were in the land of Assyria in captivity under the Assyrians, they counseled what to do, and they came to the conclusion, okay, why? That they might there keep their statutes, which they never kept in their own land. See, so they wanted to come over here, to keep the law because they didn't keep it in the land of Israel. You see, and so they now, it's getting into how you so-called Latinos, you came to the Western Hemisphere of the world. So now, let me pull up a different map here. Okay. Let me get does it have it? Hopefully it has it. All right. Keep this one up. All right. Um, so lock in. Crazy, man. Oh man, Salakia, you know, screen paused. Salakia for that. Screen had paused. All right, but bear me 1 second. You know, how this thing is doing what it does. All right, but yeah. So and this, it makes sense because let's look at something real quick. Give me 1 second. All right, so we established a series over here, and this is where this is around here, in this area where Syria is at. Okay, Northern Kingdom, was taken up here and everything. All right, now it says here, okay, so they decided, to leave and go to a place where never mankind lived at, so they keep the laws, right? Verse 43, and they entered into Euphrates by the narrow places of the river. Okay, um, so the Euphrates River. Okay, so let me get this. A good one. Oh no, I want a clear one. Let's see, hopefully this one is good. You can see it. The Euphrates. It says Euphrates. This is the Euphrates right here. Okay, so they entered, and so in Assyria would be, you know, around here. Okay, so Assyria would be around here. All right. So as we see, I could have just used this map the whole time. Anyways, this is the Euphrates River. That blue line right here is the Euphrates River. All right, so this is the Euphrates River, and Assyria is over here. So they decided that they would leave the heathens. All right, to go into a country where a place where never mankind dwelt at. All right, and keep the law. Verse 44: For the Most High then showed signs for them and held still the flood till they were passed over. All right. Verse 45: For through that country there was a great way to go, namely of a year and a half, meaning it took them a year and a half to get to their destination. All right. And it says what this in the same region is called Arsareth. Okay. Now, Arsareth is talking about the Americas. All right. Now, let me get that in a minute. Let me just get this real quick because it said it took them a year and a half, right, to get to it. Oh, no. 29. Okay. And the word Arsareth means another land. And to prove it, this is the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 28, like 29 and verse 28. And Yahweh rooted them out of their land in anger and in wrath and in great indignation and cast them into another land as it is this day. Now, when you look up this term, another land in Hebrew, right? Let's get it real quick. Another land. Okay. Let me just see. Salakia. Another land. All right. Another is what? As it says, Acharath, and land, Aratazah. All right. You know, so the way you would say it, I believe, is either Acharath, Aratazah, or Aratazah Acharath, all right, which means another land. Okay. And it sounds like you're saying what? Arsareth. Aratazah Acharath, Arsareth. Aratazah Acharath, Arsareth. See, another land. That's what it means. That's all Arsaret means. But somebody might say, well, how do you know that this is talking about the Americas? All right. Well, one, remember, it said of a year and a half. So it took them 1.5 years to get over here. A year and a half. All right. So this is the Americas because what? Now under King Solomon, and remember all the tribes were united under King Solomon, including Northern Kingdom, right? Under King Solomon. All right. Let's see what he did. First Kings chapter 10. Right? First Kings chapter 10. King Solomon, he was very rich. Okay. So it says wealth, splendor, and wisdom. Now the way to no, I'm gonna just get to the point. All right. So this is First Kings chapter 10 and verse 22. For the king had at sea a navy of Tarshish with the navy of Hiram. All right. So he had a navy doing what? Once in 3 years came the navy of Tarshish bringing gold and silver, ivory, and apes and peacocks. Let me get this in another translation of the Bible. Let me see NLT. NLT for me, please. It says, the king had a ship, Slakia, the king had a fleet of trading ships that sailed with Hiram's fleet. Once every 3 years, the ships returned. Once every 3 years. Let me see if it says something else. Yeah, so we'll just keep saying once every 3 years, once every 3 years. All right. We're doing what? Bringing gold and silver, ivory, and they continually bring you stuff once 3 years. What does that mean? All right. So that means that means it's going to take what? A year and a half going there to wherever they're going to gather whatever they're going to bring you, and a year and a half coming back. So that means what? For them to complete a whole trip is going to take 3 years. Okay. So we're going to take a year and a half to get there and a year and a half to get back. You only see them once every 3 years. Okay. But it takes them a year and a half to get to this certain place. Right. And a year and a half to get back. All right. And that's the same amount of time it took the Northern Kingdom to get to this region called Arsareth. Right. Let me look at that word region real quick. This region, area or division, especially part of a country or the world having definable characteristics but not always fixed boundaries. All right. So area of the world, basically, which that's the Western Hemisphere. But as the Apostle Ramlab had brought out, right? Because what's one thing that this navy brought to King Solomon is bringing gold and silver, ivory, and apes and peacocks. Now you look at this word peacocks, right? The Hebrew word is thakayayim, however you say it. All right. Now you go down to the Gesenius Hebrew Chaldee Lexicon. It says here for peacocks. Wait 1 second. Okay. Here's is also what? Pavo. All right. Pavo. Now let's do something real quick. Okay. No. Because that's Spanish. Spanish to English. All right. So now let's look this up. All right. Pavo, which means turkey. Okay. So one thing they brought was turkeys. Right. Now watch this. Where are turkeys native to? The Americas. Boom. Right here says, I'm gonna look at the AI overview actually. It says turkeys are native to North America, More specifically, they are native to the eastern and southwestern regions of the United States and parts of Mexico. They have been domesticated for centuries and are now found in many parts of the world, including North America, Europe, and beyond. But they're native to America. Okay, a species that is native only to the Americas. This is what they were bringing back. So this proves that they came over here and it took them. So this is what part of what they were bringing back to King Solomon. All right. So this proves that that navy what came to the Americas. All right, and it took a year and a half for them to get here. Remember, I said once in every 3 years. Half of three is one and a half, 1.5, right? And that once again is the same amount of time it took the Northern Kingdom to get over here. All right, to the Western Hemisphere. All right, to the Americas. Right. And you would think, well, how would they know to get over here? Well, remember hey, they were under King Solomon, right? So they obviously would know about King Solomon sending a navy over here. King Solomon was ruling over the whole nation of Israel. It wasn't divided under his time, as we read. You see? So this is how the Northern Kingdom got to the Americas. So as we read, they was over here. Salakia for the background noise. Let it pass. All right, so they were over here, they into the Euphrates. Okay, so they came down here, boom, bam, and the apostle Ramla, when he was breaking down, he was going into it. He was showing the ocean currents and how basically it takes you over to the Americas. All right, so he was going down here. So down this way, all right, over here, and he landed down here at the bottom, and they migrated upwards. And that is how you so-called Latinos and North American Indians, all right, the Northern Kingdom, that is how you arrived to the Americas. Okay, this is how you got to the Western Hemisphere. All right, you left the land of Israel during the time the Assyrians took you out of there. Okay, you have not been back to your homeland for a long period of time, but you are going to go back very soon. Okay, so it wasn't a Bering Strait. It wasn't any of that. All right. Let me see if I can get the ocean current maps. Here's the one the apostle had, man. Over the one the apostle had, basically. Hmm. I mean, I can still use it. All right, I can still use a different one. Let me use this one. It's off of Wikipedia, so shit. But anyways, you know, this might have been the one he used, but you could definitely see the one that he had used. All right, but as you can see, okay, these are the ocean currents, and the ocean current is basically the way it takes you. All right, the way the water moves. All right, so you know so they left here, and you see it goes the ocean current what goes down here in between here, and it says it goes up here, but basically they came here, and you have this here, but as it showed in the apostles map that he had, all right, that basically you know it came from here, the ocean current goes over this way. See, so yeah, so it would make sense for them to come out of here and come down and come across. And they landed down here and went up and migrated. All right. And they would get to their specific lands as prophesied in Genesis 49. Okay. That's how you so-called Latinos came to, and you North American Indians ended up. You had the whole thing with the conquistadors coming over here and finding you. Let's go to show Christopher Columbus. He ain't discovered nothing, man. All right. But continuing on, because now, so we understand that now, how the northern kingdom got to the western hemisphere. All right. We understand that. But now dealing with the southern kingdom, Judah, Benjamin, and Levi, the so-called Negroes, West Indians, and Haitians. How did you get over here to the western hemisphere? Because it wasn't only them. When you part of Israel too. All right. This is also why, when you read in the scriptures, when Yahweh Shai was on the scene, northern kingdom, the majority wasn't around. All right. During the Babylonian Empire, they wasn't around. All right. They wasn't, in the land of Israel. During the Greek Roman Empire, they weren't in the land of Israel. All right. You know, they were already on the Western Hemisphere. When Yahweh Shai was on the scene, they wasn't in the land of Israel for the most part. Now you had some Northern Kingdom Israelites amongst the Southern Kingdom that were in the land. Let me get a precept to prove that. And this is Luke chapter 2 and 36. It says, and there was one Anna, a prophetess, the daughter of Phanuel of the tribe of Asher. That Asher is a part of the Northern Kingdom. So she would have been a so-called South American. They are the people of Colombia to Uruguay. All right. You know, but where is it? 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 Okay. So but she was around. Okay. See, so you had some that were amongst the Southern Kingdom. So she was of a great age and had lived with her husband 7 years from her virginity. Okay. So there you go. All right. But now dealing with but oh yeah, also too, as it says here, for the Most High then showed signs for them and held still the floods that they were passed over. So while they made their journey over, calm the sea so they could get over here. It's a part of prophecy, right? The Lord is in control. So the Lord says, then dwelt they there unto the latter time. And now when they, the southern kingdom, shall begin to come, the highest shall stay the springs of the stream again, that they may go through. Therefore sawest thou the multitude with peace. All right. So when the southern kingdom will get over to the western hemisphere, you so-called blacks, right? The Lord will calm the waters again, so you can make it. Now this goes into what? How did they get over here? The transatlantic slave trade. All right, so the transatlantic slave trade was a system of forced human migration where Europeans and Americans purchased and shipped enslaved Africans across the Atlantic Ocean to work in the Americas. This trade, which lasted from the 16th to the 19th centuries, resulted in millions of Africans being forcibly transported, separated from their families, and subjected to brutal conditions during the Middle Passage. And it says Middle Passage. The journey across the Atlantic Ocean was known as the Middle Passage. It was a grueling and deadly voyage for the enslaved people who were often crammed in the ships with little to no space, food, or sanitation. And as we know, this is recorded in the scriptures. All right. You know, this is Deuteronomy 28 and verse 68. It says, and Yahweh shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships. And this is not talking about the Egypt in Africa. You wouldn't need ships to go there. What it's talking about, this Egypt will be the new modern day Egypt, which is America. For them slave ships, were really brought to. Now they were, as you see this map here, they were brought other places as well, different parts of Europe and everything. But see, they were mainly brought to, the Americas or the Western Hemisphere, different parts of South America, but really, the United States, okay? North America, the USA. All right? With ships. Why would it say with ships? Because that transatlantic slave trade was a part of the curses, which is a part of Bible prophecy that will happen to the Israelites. It says, by the way whereof I spake unto thee, thou shalt see it no more again. And there, in this new Egypt, in America, ye shall be sold unto your enemies. Who? The so-called white man. How are we sold unto them? By auction and blocks. See? For what? For bond men and bond women, slave men and slave women, what it means. And that's what didn't it say here, you know, that they purchased and shipped what enslaved Africans, so-called Africans, because we ain't the same people. And even those literal Africans, those Hamites over there, they know that. That's you so-called blacks and Hamites are not the same people. We're two different nations of people, even though we look the same. They call us Africans because that's where they got us from. Now they give you the term African American. All right, you know. But it says this trade, which lasted from the 16th to 19th centuries, resulted in millions of Africans being forcibly transported, separated from their families, and subjected to brutal conditions during the Middle Passage. Yeah, so ultimately we were brought over here, right, and we became slaves. Okay, and that was a part of the curses as we just read. It says, "And no man shall buy you. No man would." This right here, we basically talk about it with the so-called blacks in the transatlantic slave trade. But Deuteronomy 28 verses 15 through 68, they apply to the whole nation of Israel. You know, and they, different things. Okay, they apply to the whole nation. All right, but you know, there was no coincidence that this happened. All right, and those Hamites, they sold us. All right, they sold us to the so-called white man. But this devil, he'll try to say black people, our own people sold us out. No, they didn't. Another people that looked like, that was dark like us, sold us to the so-called white man. And even when they bring up that argument, it's like they forget that they, traded for him. If that would have never happened, then what? If they would have never traded for him, you think they would have gave him to you? Like, I'm just, making the example, They act like they didn't, trade for him. Okay. They act like they didn't kind of like, I want to say the word seduce, you know, like they ain't like, give them a reason to trade us to them or hand them over. That's the devil for you. Okay. But, they found Jake over here in the western coast of Africa because what? Why did they find us in West Africa? If the Southern Kingdom, right, was over here, all right, you so-called blacks, because your homeland is also the land of Israel, right? If you was over here, how did you end up over here in Africa, western coast of Africa? Because what? You had our Lord and Savior Yahweh Shai, Hamashiach, the Savior of the nation of Israel, right? He knew these times was coming. He knew 70 AD was going to happen, which is why he said this right here. Matthew 24, starting in verse 15. When ye therefore shall see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet, which you could read about in Daniel chapter 9, verses 24 to the end of that chapter, which describes, the time of building of the temple to the time of the Messiah, and also the Romans coming in and sieging Jerusalem in 70 AD, right? Stand in the holy place, whoso readeth, let him understand. Then let them which be in Judea, which is, let me see if I can get another map. Oh, Judea, okay. This, are it's in the land of Israel. So he was saying the Israelites that's in Judea, what? Flee into the mountains. So, which was what? Basically, you know, flee all the way into Africa, when you see the Romans come. Okay. And he was saying what? Let him which is on the housetop not come down to take anything out of his house, neither let him which is in the field return back to take his clothes. And woe unto the man of a child and to them that give suck in those days. See, so he was saying, don't even go to take nothing. Just leave. Just flee when you see the Romans coming. Okay. Luke 21, verse 20 says, Slakia. It says, and when ye shall see Jerusalem compassed with armies, then and know the desolation thereof is nigh. When you see the Roman armies coming, the Yahweh Shah prophesied about it. Verse 21, then let them which are in Judea flee to the mountains, see, and to West Africa, and let them which are in the midst of it depart out, and let not them that are in the countries enter thereinto. See? Bear me 1 second. You know, it says, for these be the days of vengeance, that all things which are written may be fulfilled. Okay? So verse 23, but woe unto them that are with child, and to them that give suck in those days, for there shall be great distress in the land, and wrath upon this people. So, because in that time, Jake had our people, they had children during 70 AD. Because 70, and Yahushua was saying this because 70 AD would be the time of great slaughter. All right. And this is mentioned also in uh Deuteronomy 28, but I'm not going to get right now. Deuteronomy 28 and 49 on down, right? Let me just get up. What was the siege of Jerusalem? Right? Um so I'll get for the background noise. I'm gonna let it pass. All right. But it says here the siege of Jerusalem refers to several historical military campaigns against the city, primarily involving Roman and Neo Babylonian forces. The most significant siege occurred in 70 CE, or in other words, 70 AD, during the First Jewish Roman War, where Roman forces under Titus destroyed the Second Temple and much of the city. Other sieges include those led by Nebuchadnezzar. So that's that. But let me just type in Siege of Jerusalem 70 AD. I'll type that in. Okay. You know, it says the Siege of Jerusalem in 70 AD was the decisive event of the First Jewish Roman War, a major rebellion against Roman rule in the province of Judea. Led by Titus, Roman forces besieged the Jewish capital, which had become the main stronghold of the revolt. Okay. So 70 AD, and historian Flavius Josephus, which was an Israelite, okay, he recorded different events that happened in 70 AD. You can read about that. Okay, you just look it up. Josephus, 70 AD, right? But during this time is when the Romans, which was Esau, came against us, man. They came against you so-called blacks, you so-called Negroes, West Indies, and Haitians. All right, tribes of Judah, Benjamin, and Levi. Okay. Back in Luke 21, all right, 24 it says, and they shall fall shall be led away captive in all nations, right? Jerusalem shall be trodden down of the Gentiles until the times of the Gentiles be fulfilled. All right. And Jerusalem trodden down of the Gentiles, because now it's inhabited by the land. Now it's inhabited by the heathens. You look at the heathens, and now it's inhabited by them. Okay. But you know, uh so that happened. Okay. But when this happened, how I told our people to flee into Africa. All right. And that was also a part of prophecy. All right. So I'm getting all this to, show you, all right, that one, how you so called, this is, uh, leading up to how you so called Negroes, West Indians, and Haitians, how you got to the Western Hemisphere as well. Okay. You know, this is all part of the Lord's movie. All right. The Lord is the one that brings these things to pass. Isaiah chapter 45 and verse 7. All right. Unlike this, what the so-called white man tell you that he just found you in the west coast of Africa. It'll give you so he'll record your history just starting off in Africa, or in slavery. All right, that's what you learn in the school system. Okay, but it's deep. It's way, way, way deeper than that, man. Okay, this Revelation 12, starting in verse 1. It says, "And there appeared a great wonder in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun." And this is the Apostle John, one of the 12 disciples of Yahweh Shai, right? Who was also called John the Revelator, right? So he was getting visions. He recorded them. That's how he had the book of Revelation, right? Which Revelation means revealing. So it says, "And there appeared a great wonder in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun, and the moon under her feet, and upon her head a crown of 12 stars." All right. And this woman, as you see, it says Israel, represents Israel. All right. You know, this doesn't mean a literal woman is going to pop up somewhere, okay, with the sun and moon under her feet. She clothes with she wrapping the sun and the sky around her and standing on the moon. No, that doesn't mean that. Okay. The woman, this is, prophecy, right? But it's basically it's representing something. So the woman is Israel. Let me just pull some quick precepts. Israel is likened unto a woman. This is the book of Jeremiah 6:2. "I have likened the daughter of Zion to a comely and delicate woman." Okay. You know? Um, and then it says, "With the sun and the moon under her feet." With the sun and moon, represents wisdom, knowledge, and understanding. Because the Lord gave the laws, prophets, mysteries, wisdom and knowledge and understanding to the Israelites, to conduct themselves and separate them from the other nations. All right. And then it says, "And upon her head a crown of 12 stars," which represents 12 tribes of the 12 tribes of Israel. That should be, you know, easy, okay, to understand. It says, "And she being with child cried, travailing in birth and pain to be delivered." Okay. Because just prior to the time of Yahweh Shai being born, the Israelites, were catching hell by the Romans, and were looking to be delivered of it. All right. We read about that. Okay. Verse 3. Now it says, "And there appeared another wonder in heaven, and behold, a great red dragon, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and 7 crowns upon his heads." All right. And this dragon is talking about the ancient pagan Roman Empire. All right. Because, you had the old 10 horns and all that, right? Let's talk about the ancient pagan Roman Empire, right? And it says, "In his tail drew the third part of the stars of heaven." The stars are what? Remember I said 12 stars up here, but what? The 12 tribes, right? It said the third part of the stars of heaven, and they cast them to the earth. So what is it talking about? Who are these 3 stars here? Judah, Benjamin, and Levi. Okay? Tribes. Judah, Benjamin, and Levi, right? You know? So it says, "In his tail drew the third part of the stars of heaven, and they cast them to the earth." Okay. No, when the Roman Empire was in power over Israel at the time, and they basically, took them down, you know, took them down. All right. It says, "And a dragon stood before the woman, which was ready to be delivered, and for to devour her child as soon as it was born." And this goes into when Herod, all right, was had sent to kill Yahweh Shai when he was yet a baby. All right. That's what this goes into. Okay. And you could read about in Matthew, the second chapter. This to show you, this furthermore shows that the dragon is referencing the Roman Empire. All right, because Herod, around the time of Yahweh Shai, talking about Herod the Great. All right. Let me just see what empire was Herod the Great with. The Herodian kingdom was a client state of the Roman Republic, later Roman Empire, ruled from 37 to 4 BCE by Herod the Great, who was appointed king of the Jews by the Roman Senate. Okay, so when we read here, it's talking about this dragon is the ancient pagan Roman Empire, right? Verse 5, and it said, and the dragon stood before the woman, Israel, which was ready to be delivered, for to devour her child as soon as it was born, because Yahweh came of Israel, right? He came out of the nation. He's an Israelite. He's the top Israelite. Okay, verse 5. And she brought forth a man child who was to rule all nations with a rod of iron, and that's what he's coming back to do. And her child was caught up unto Yahweh into his throne, because Yahweh ascended back into the heavens, right? Acts 1 and 9. Verse 6, it says, and a woman, Israel, all right, fled into the wilderness. And this is, really the three tribes, Judah, Benjamin, and Levi, fled into the wilderness. Okay. Talking about how you know, she the bear me just 1 second. Yeah, going into how, the three tribes, Judah, Benjamin, and Levi, the so-called black tribes, so-called Negroes, West Indian Haitians. Damn. All right. It's lucky. I don't know what the fuck going on. All right, but basically, let me just put it back. All right. Yeah, basically how, you so-called Negroes, West Indian, and Haitians, being you tribes here. If once again, if you want to know who the tribes are, brothers have done videos on it. Our apostles and elders of Great Millstone have done videos on it. Other brothers in Great Millstone have done videos on it. Right. And in the playlist I've mentioned at the beginning of this video goes into who the tribes are. All right. That me and a brother had done. All right. But basically, okay, when it says here that and the woman fled into the wilderness, going into how, this is talking about how you so-called Negroes, West Indians, and Haitians, you fled into Africa during the time of 70 AD. Okay. Now you have this here, right? This is an excerpt out of the book Babylon to Timbuktu. Oh shit! No, I don't want to open TikTok. All right, but basically, okay. If I could just pull this picture up here, it out of the book. I forget what page this is on. It's page 80 something, but I'll just read this here. It says in the year 65, should say AD. All right. So the Roman armies under General Pompey captured Jerusalem in 70 AD. General Vespasian and his son Titus put an end to the Jewish state. Because you so-called blacks, you so-called Negroes, West Indian, and Haitians, all right, you are the true Jews. The word Jews comes from the tribe of Judah, all right. In the Hebrew, Jews is the word Jew is Yahweh. Okay, that's how you say Jew in the Hebrew, Yahweh. Okay, but that term was applied to Judah, Benjamin, and Levi. So you so-called Negroes, West Indian, the Haitians, you are the real Jews, not these small hats out here. Okay, but it says Titus put an end to the Jewish state with great slaughter committed against the residue of the people. Now listen, during the period from Pompey to Julius, it has been estimated that over 1 million Jews fled into Africa, fleeing from Roman persecution and slavery. The slave markets were full of black Jewish slaves. And there you have it. Okay. There you go. And that's documented history right there. Right. So when this is also spoken about in scriptures. So when the woman fled into the wilderness, we fled into Africa. All right. This is why when the so-called Europeans, the white man came over and found us. This is why he found us in Africa, because we fled out of the land of Israel, out of Jerusalem during the time of 70 AD, when the Romans were coming after us. We fled into Africa. When the time came, they found us over there. Right. It says where she had the place prepared of the Most High. And that place is talking about America. All right. Let me get something real quick. The book of Joel 3, starting in verse 1. For behold, in those days and in that time when I shall bring again the captivity of Judah and Jerusalem, because right now we're in slavery. So this is actually saying in the time the Lord will deliver our people out of slavery, out of captivity, which we're in now. I will also gather all nations and will bring them down into the valley of Jehoshaphat, which is in the Middle East, the land of Israel, somewhere, right? And will plead with them there, and to judge with them. The Lord's going to gather all nations. It's talking about World War III. All right, so the time the Lord going to deliver us, he will gather all nations, all right, over there in that region during World War III, and will plead or judge with them there for my people and for my heritage Israel. So the reason why and that's what they did to us. All right. Every 1 second. Yeah. So whom they have scattered whom they have scattered among the nations, which happened from 70 AD forward, especially, the slave trade in part of my land. In Ezekiel 36 and 5, it talks about how the heathens are in the land, especially, so-called white men, Idumeans, which is a Greek way of saying Edomites, man. All right. Verse 3 it says, they have cast lots for my people, right? They sold us on auction blocks. It says they have given a boy for an harlot. They sold our young men as sex slaves and sold a girl for wine that they might drink. And, they sold our people and women for wine and raw materials. This happened with the transatlantic slave trade and other slave trades as well. Verse 4. I'm going to just jump down to the point. All right. Verses 6 through, verse, no, I'm going to start from verse 4. Yea, what have you to do with me, O Tyrians, Zidon? Talking about Hamites, right? And all the coast of Palestine. Will ye render me a recompense? And if ye recompense me swiftly and speedily, will I return your recompense upon your own head, right? Verse 5, because ye have taken my silver and my gold, and have carried into your temples my goodly pleasant things. The children also of Judah and the children of Jerusalem have ye sold unto the Grecians, right? Now, the Grecians is talking about the so-called white man. And the Hebrew says Yavon, but, which goes back to Japheth, but, Esau pushed them out, all right, of their lands. So it was really referring to the so-called white man here, all right? Because what? Those literal Africans, they sold our people to the so-called white man. It says that you might remove them far from their border, right? We were removed far from our border, all right? But verse 7, behold, I will raise them what? Out of the place where ye have sold them. You see? Which is what? America, right? It says, and will return your recompense upon your own head. But the point is, the place is America, as it says. So when we read Revelation 12, where she got the place prepared to the Most High, that they should feed her there. So that place prepared to the Most High is America. We fled into Africa and got taken by ships into America. Okay? And that is how you so-called blacks ended up on the Western Hemisphere of the world. All right? You know? We ended up here. All right? Now, we came here, people was conquered, even the so-called, even the Northern Kingdom, so-called Latinos, so-called blacks, went through slavery. And during that, what we had fallen away. I'm gonna get that real quick. We discontinued from our heritage. Everything, we forgot who we were. We forgot we were Israelites and all of that. Jeremiah 17 and 4, I'm gonna just read it. And thou even thyself shalt discontinue from thine heritage that I gave thee, and I will cause thee to serve thine enemies in the land which thou knowest not, for ye have kindled a fire in my anger, which shall burn forever. Okay? And so we will discontinue from our heritage. That's why we didn't know who we were. And it happened during Second Thessalonians. Actually, hold on. Before I get that, but now the Lord is waking us up. You see, because we forgot who we were. Now the Lord is waking us up. Um, Ezekiel 37. Let me start at verse 11. It says, "Then he said unto me, Son of man, these bones are the whole house of Israel. Behold, they say, Our bones are dried, and our hope is lost. We are cut off for our parts." Verse 12, "Therefore prophesy and say unto them, Thus saith the Lord Yahweh, Behold, O my people, I will open your graves and cause you to come up out of your graves." All right. And this is literal, it's talking about the Lord will wake us back up, because the scriptures say in the book of Proverbs, chapter 21, in verse 16, "The man that wandereth out of the way of understanding shall remain in the congregation of the dead." All right. You know, so basically, if you don't have the understanding of the truth, there's wisdom, knowledge, and understanding, okay, then basically you're spiritually dead. Like, our people who don't understand the truth, look at them, they're spiritually dead. They don't know who they are, they don't even care about who they are. They just out here willy-nilly, man. They're just spiritually dead. See? But this truth, brings them back to life. This truth will bring them back to life, so to speak. Let me get this scripture. Bear with me real quick. I'm gonna go on mute. All right, Salakia. Okay, this is the book of St. John 6 and 63. It is the spirit that quickeneth, the flesh profiteth nothing. The words that I speak unto you, they are spirit and they are life. So these scriptures, all right, this word, all right, is spirit, it's life. Okay. So think about it. If you don't have these words in you, then what? If you don't have this truth, this wisdom, knowledge, understanding, what? You are spiritually what? Dead. Okay. You know. So when the Lord said, if you, but picture it like this: if you come up out of a grave, then you're what? You're alive, right? So the Lord will wake us back up. And this is why you see so-called blacks, Latinos, Native Americans calling themselves Hebrew Israelites. This is not just some movement. It's not just some fad. This is a part of prophecy. Okay. And get a precept. Revelation 11, verse 11, right? And it says, and after 3 days and a half, which represents 350 years, being from what? 1619 to 1969, all right? You know, is when, is being 1619 being the time, basically like the bulk of the slave trade happened. And in 1969, being, when the Israelites started waking up again. So that whole time period in between is when this devil really had his foot on our necks, slavery, all that, Jim Crow, all that stuff, man. But after that time period, what? The spirit of life from Yahweh entered into them. Meaning what? We woke back up. After that time period, we woke back up. And they stood upon their feet, and great fear fell upon them which saw them. Okay? You know? So back in Ezekiel 37, it says, I will open your graves and cause you to come up out of your graves. And what's going to happen next? And bring you into the land of Israel. So he woke up. But this is the next part. You see? And how are we going to go into the land of Israel? Right? By way when Yahweh Shai returns, it makes his second coming. And it's going to start with the elect. The elect will get beamed up into the chariot. Verse 12. And they heard a great voice from heaven. Revelation 11 and 12. And they heard a great voice from heaven saying unto them, come up hither. And they ascended up to heaven in a cloud. They got beamed up into a chariot, and their enemies beheld them. See, this is coming. This is yet to come. You see, and this is gonna happen on the day of the Lord. But look, some things had to happen first. 2 Thessalonians 2, starting in verse 1. Now we beseech you, brethren, by the coming of our Lord Yahweh Shah HaMashiach, and by our gathering together unto him, that ye be not soon shaken in mind, or be troubled, neither by spirit nor by word. Verse 3, let no man deceive you, that the day of the Lord is when Yahweh Shah returns. Let no man deceive you by any means, for that day that he returns shall not come except there come a falling away first, which this happened. Okay? Jeremiah 17 and 4. We fell away from who we were, we forgot who we were, all of that. Okay? Slavery, that was that falling away. There's in that man of sin be revealed, the son of perdition. Okay? Which is the so-called white man. All right. He is the man of sin. He's called the wicked. Malachi 1 and 4. All right. We know who he is. He's been revealed. He's the son of perdition because their vessels fitted under wrath. Romans chapter 9. So that's happened. Okay. So now, you know, so let me just jump down to this verse 8. And it says, then shall that wicked be revealed, whom the Lord shall consume with the spirit of his mouth, which is the prophets, going to the prophets, which is happening. And then it says, and shall destroy with the brightness of his coming when Yahweh Shah is returning. So now we just waiting for Yahweh Shah to return. We get the show on the road, man. Jacob's trouble, all hell breaking loose. And as it says, um, he shall be saved out of it. Okay? You know, um, and every one of that people, basically roughly paraphrasing Daniel 12 and 1, the latter part, and thy people shall be delivered, everyone that shall be found written in the book, the elect, because Yahweh Shah is going to come back in the midst of World War III, Jacob's trouble, all right, to deliver his elect. Okay, so as a quick recap, let me get this last scripture real quick. It's the book of Micah, chapter 4, and verse 10. or the Zion being Israelites, for now shalt thou go forth out of the city of Jerusalem, and thou shalt dwell in the field, and thou shalt go even to Babylon, because another name for America is Babylon, Babylon the Greek. Okay, it's also Egypt, but another name is Babylon the Greek. And what? There shalt thou be delivered, because Yahweh Shai, when he comes back, all right, and yet you have to understand that Yahweh Shai is a very important piece. He's a very important person, man. Okay, he's a very because look, if it wasn't for Yahweh Shah, we would have had no kingdom to look forward to. No man would get us out of this low down condition we in. So Yahweh Shah is a very, very, very important person, man. He's the son of Yahweh, man, and he's the savior of these people. When he comes back, these people, you so-called blacks, Latinos, Native Americans, that's when you're going to be set on high. That's when you're going to be you're going to have your sovereignty. That's when you're going to get your justice. That's when you're going to be in rulership. Okay, that's when you're not going to have this so-called white man over you. That's when you're not going to have him, you know, shoot you in the street anymore. None of that. That's when you're going to be respected as a people, man. When Yahweh Shah returns, the Messiah, the one the world ignorantly calls Jesus, who is not a so-called white man, he's a so-called black man of the tribe of Judah. Okay? Only when he comes is it going to be made right, and we ain't going to be in this low condition anymore. See, if it wasn't for him, none of this stuff would happen. Okay? So we need him to come back, and you have to recognize him that as the savior of the nation of Israel and the son of Yahweh. Okay? But only the elect is going to get it, man. Only the elect. All right. But as it says, and thou shalt go even to Babylon, which happened, right? We here in America, we was brought here. It says, there shalt thou be delivered, right? Because the main place that Israelites are going to get delivered out of is North America, the USA. But the elect of Israel is going to get mainly delivered out of North America, the USA. But also, all right, as Yahweh Shai said, because the elect is scattered, you have brothers in different countries, man, outside of America. You know, this is why Yahweh Shai said this, and he shall send his angels with a great sound of a trumpet, and they shall gather together his elect from the four winds. The elect are the chosen men of the nation of Israel. The chosen, well, let me say the chosen of the nation of Israel. Okay. You know, they're going to understand this truth. They're going to wake up to this truth. All right. It's not all the nation of Israel, it's not the whole nation as was in the time of Egypt. All right. Of ancient Egypt. This time when Yahweh Shai comes back is going to be the chosen. It's going to be a remnant that he delivers. Okay. But it says he shall gather together his elect from the four winds, from one end of heaven to the other. So from all over the world, Yahweh Shai, when he comes back, is going to beam up his elect into what the world ignorantly calls UFOs, which are the chariots of the Lord. Okay. That's going to be that deliverance, but it's mainly going to take place out of the USA, North America. So you see, it says, so now shall go even to Babylon, there shalt thou be delivered. There Yahweh, Bahashim Yahweh Shai, shall redeem thee from the hand of thine enemies. And we waiting on this, man. Okay. So as a quick recap, I just had this map up, our people had a split. The last time it was, fully as a nation together under it was under what King David, King Solomon. We had basically our sovereignty and everything. Then the split happened. Okay, kingdom, southern kingdom, northern kingdom got taken into captivity by Assyria. All right, the Assyrians, it was prophecy that they would leave. Okay, and they would come to the Western Hemisphere. All right, and the southern kingdom, the so-called blacks, so-called Negroes, West Indians, and Haitians, you was still in the land of Israel. All right, and 70 AD came along. Okay, Jerusalem got besieged, and for the most part, you fled into Western Africa, and as well as other places too, but mostly Western Africa. And from there, this so-called white man, he came and put you on slave ships, cargo slave ships, shipped you all over the world, but mainly to the Americas. All right. and ultimately, we we had the falling away. Slavery took place, okay, etc. Even though the kingdom was conquered by the conquistadors prior to that, all right, and after a period of time, the truth started being preached again. Started Elder Abba Bivens, then other men, Elder Arviyah, the Yaikwab, King Masha, all right, etc. All right. Then you had what? You know, the apostles, the elders of Great Millstone. You had other Israelite camps out there, but I'm just focusing on a certain ones right now. A certain the apostles and elders of Great Millstone and the like-minded brothers under them teaching this doctrine, teaching now you have basically a lot of so-called blacks, Latinos, Native Americans waking up to the fact that they're Hebrew Israelites. Okay, you know, and this doctrine that Great Millstone preach has been preached. Great Millstone, or GMS for short, has been preached all over the world, man. Okay, all over the earth. All right, by way of the internet, and I'm gonna get that real quick, Salakia. Let me just get this. Matthew 24, verse 14. Right, it says, "In this gospel of the kingdom, this doctrine that GMS teaches shall be preached in all the world by way of what? The internet. Right? So for a witness unto all nations. So this doctrine that GMS teaches will be preached all over the world by way of the internet. Okay. Then what? Then shall the end come. Right? Then the end of this devil's so this gospel will be preached all over the world by way of the internet. All right. You have brothers, that's why you have, Great Millstone in different countries around the world outside of America, waking up. Okay. And then what? The end is gonna come. You're gonna have the MOTB being made mandatory, our temptation, Jacob's trouble, which is lawlessness in the streets and by the way. Don't take the micro C hip, okay, which is the MOTB, the M of the beast. Don't take that. All right. No matter what you do, don't take it. No matter what happens, no matter what you go through, don't take that, man. Okay. Because you won't have a chance of salvation. So that's gonna happen. Jacob's trouble, lawlessness. All right. Chaos, mass death and destruction, World War III. All right. And in the midst of World War III, the one the world ignorantly calls Yahweh Shai, Hamashiach, Slaki, the one the world ignorantly calls Jesus, whose true name is Yahweh Shai Hamashiach, all right, the savior of the nation of Israel, and only the nation of Israel, will make his second coming to this world. Okay. He will make his second coming to this world in the midst of World War III, which is being cooked up as we speak by the Lord. That's why you see all these nations and these things happening amongst the world, man, because the prophecies are coming to pass. And meanwhile, the prophets are prophesying of these things. But soon the famine of the word is going to come, and the prophets are going to be stop teaching. They're going to stop prophesying. These lessons are going to stop going out, and things in the prophecies are going to all hell going to break loose. Jacob's trouble is going to break loose, man. Okay, but once again, in the midst of World War III, Yahweh Shah HaMashiach is going to make his second coming to this world. All right, with the what the world ignorantly calls UFOs, which are the chariots of the Heavenly Father. Okay, and he's going to beam up his elect. All right, from all over the world. He's going to beam up the elect of the nation of Israel from all over the world, as we read. We got North America, the USA. Okay, in America. All right. Mashiach is going to take down the current nations. He's going to take down the heathen rulerships of the world. And he's going to set up his kingdom on earth, aka the throne of David. Okay, and this world will then be governed, and this world will then be governed in true righteousness, man. All right, so Esau will be out of power. Israelites, and the Israelites are going to enforce the laws, statutes, and commandments on amongst the heathen. All right, and this world will be ruled in righteousness forevermore, and we will be empowered forevermore. We will. It's going to be known that we will be the supreme nation in the world. All right, under Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai. Okay, so that's what's coming, man. All right, the kingdom of heaven is only for the Israelites. Are going to be glorious. We're going to have slaves. The Lord's going to give us payback on our enemies, especially the so-called white men. Everything they done to us, man. All right. So this is coming, man. You know, and when this nuclear destruction happens, the elect is going to be in that chariot watching it happen. Revelation 15, Psalm 91. Okay, so that was, lesson going into that, man. All right. Lord willing, this lesson was edifying, giving all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Hakodash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone, never well. Peace, blessings, and salutations to the elect. Shalom to the elect.